Fukushima's Daiichi nuclear power station reaches high radiation levels again. According to the Tokyo Electric Power Company on Thursday, February 2nd, atmospheric readings as high as 530 sieverts an hour were recorded inside the containment vessel of one of the 3 nuclear reactors. Those radiation levels are the highest since the main nuclear plant suffered a triple meltdown in 2011 after a tsunami hit the coast of Japan. A sievert is the measure of a health effect of low levels of ionizing radiation on the human body. At the plant's current sievert levels, even brief exposure would kill a person.
In Japan, radiation levels inside a reactor at a disabled Fukushima nuclear plant are thought to be potent enough to kill humans in a matter of seconds. After analyzing the plant's number 2 reactor, Tokyo Electric Power Company, the site's operator, reported that radiation levels are far higher than previous record detected in 2012. They also found that a metal grating on a container of nuclear fuel has caved in, essentially creating a hole about 1 meter in diameter. Nearly 6 years ago, an earthquake on Japan's northeast coast triggered a tsunami which sent 3 of the plant's reactors into meltdown.
A highly pathogenic strain of bird flu has been confirmed in a dead wild bird found on the Han River in Seoul, and it marks the first time in 2 years for the pandemic to spread to the capital. The Seoul city government says the H5N6 strain was confirmed in a great crested grebe that was found last Monday. Now, the area within a 10-kilometre radius from where the bird was found has been designated a special monitoring area. The movement of poultry and eggs has also been sharply restricted as well. 19 Seoul districts, including Jongno and Gangnam, are subject to the tighter monitoring.
Fast food isn't exactly the healthiest option out there. And turns out even the containers and wrappers could be bad for you. According to a new study, synthetic chemicals that have been associated with cancer and other serious health problems have been found in some fast food packaging. These chemicals are known as per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFASs. They're known for their ability to resist oil, water, heat, and stains, which makes them a valuable ingredient for wrappers holding greasy fast food items. The problem is, some of those man-made chemicals have been linked to high cholesterol, low birth weight, cancer, and other health risks. And these chemicals are really hard to get rid of. They don't break down very easily in the environment, and they can build up in the human body. This particular study didn't determine whether PFASs found in packaging leached into the food, but previous research has shown the chemicals are more likely to make their way into your meal if it's hot and greasy.
Researchers have discovered that air pollution may cause Alzheimer's. Co-senior author of the study, Caleb Finch, stated, "Although the link between air pollution and Alzheimer's disease is a new scientific frontier, we now have evidence that air pollution, like tobacco, is dangerous to the aging brain." They learned this by exposing dementia-prone mice to polluted air for 15 weeks. At the end of the study, they discovered that 60% of the mice had developed more amyloid plaque than they had before, which is an effect of dementia.
Poland's capital, Warsaw, is smothered beneath a toxic layer of smog. On some winter days, pollution here is up to 10 times the EU-wide limit. The smog is caused mostly by coal stoves. Around 70% of Polish households burned coal or even rubbish for heat. Despite mounting health concerns, the government has vowed to continue using domestic coal for heat and electricity.
I've got allergies, and as soon as I go outside, I can smell this stink, this pollution. I cough all the time and get headaches.
According to the European Environmental Agency, around 50,000 people a year die prematurely due to air pollution in Poland, a country of 38 million people. Statistics in fellow EU members Bulgaria and Hungary are even worse. Professor Anna Doboszyńska, a Polish lung specialist with 30 years' experience, has seen a steady rise in pollution-related illness.
Smog triggers symptoms in people suffering from respiratory and circulatory illnesses and can even cause premature death.
Municipalities are helping homeowners replace their dirty old coal stoves with newer, cleaner models. In Warsaw, municipal police are also on patrol to sniff out polluters.
First of all, we try to make people understand the problem, and we impose small fines, for example, the equivalent of 23 euros. It's very rare that the same person burns garbage again, but if they do, the fine can be 5 times as high. If this doesn't work, the case is sent to court.
In January, patrols checked 2,300 households in the Warsaw area and issued 160 fines for burning rubbish. The city hopes that regular inspections will curb pollution.
In cities across the world, air pollution is rising at an alarming rate.
I don't send my children to the park to play. I don't want them to fall ill and get fever or cough because of the dust in the park.
Over the last 5 years, outdoor pollution has risen, with billions of people around the world exposed to dangerous air.
My advice to those around me is to not stay in Beijing if you can. When going outside, it's better to wear a facial mask. Even though I often forget about it, I still remind my family and friends.
Air pollution's costing the world trillions of dollars a year and severely impeding development in many countries. Away from the financial burden this pollution is placing on countries, there's a much more serious price being paid by some. Worldwide air pollution now kills 5.5 million people a year prematurely. More than half those deaths occur in China and other developing economies in Asia. And air pollution's costing the global economy some $5 trillion annually. The main culprit's the emission of small particles from power plants, factories, from the burning of coal and wood. And in developed countries, vehicle exhaust emissions are still a major factor.
Pyongyang says Washington and Seoul have pushed the Korean peninsula to the brink of nuclear war with their decision to deploy a controversial missile defense system. Facing this threat, the DPRK says it will hold on to its nuclear weapons. Citing the DPRK's Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of Korea, state-run news agency KCNA on Friday said the country had been identified as a target for preemptive nuclear strikes by the US. The DPRK says it will take all possible measures to improve its ability for preemptive strikes if the US and South Korea ignore repeated warnings against nuclear threats and holding of annual military exercises.
Large-scale protests turned violent in Romania as hundreds of thousands demonstrate against legislation that critics say will promote government corruption. The Guardian says the Wednesday, February 1st protests were the largest since the fall of communism in Romania in 1989. An estimated 300,000 people gathered in 50 towns and cities across the country. A small group of protesters clashed with police in Bucharest, the country's capital.
Protests on the streets of Bucharest turned violent overnight, as tens of thousands of Romanians cried out against corruption. A government decree has triggered the biggest demonstrations in the country since the fall of communism in 1989. The decree decriminalizes several graft offenses, and protesters want it repealed.
The Romanian Prime Minister says that he will now scrap a decree that would have shielded dozens of politicians from prosecution for corruption following 5 days of mass protests in the country.
Tomorrow there will be an emergency government meeting to repeal this decree. I do not want to divide Romania. It cannot be cut in half.
Sorin Grindeanu made the announcement in a televised speech. Despite the statement, nearly 170,000 anti-corruption protesters held a rally outside his office in the capital, Bucharest, calling on him to resign. Demonstrations were held in other major cities throughout the country. Under the planned law, a financial wrongdoing would only be punishable by jail if it exceeds over $47,000. Protesters see the new measure as a retreat by the government on widespread anti-corruption campaign.
South Korean protesters gathered in Seoul to demand President Park Geun-hye's immediate resignation. They were also demanding the Constitutional Court speed up the hearing process of Park's impeachment case. Organizers say more than 2,000 non-governmental organizations took part in the candlelight rally on Saturday night. Prosecutors want to question Park and search the presidential Blue House for more information about events that led to her impeachment in December.
Brazilian riot police used tear gas and stun grenades to prevent the crowd from gathering outside the parliament. The demonstrations took place while lawmakers were discussing austerity measures to tackle a deepening financial crisis in the state. The fiscal crisis comes just months after the state's signature city of Rio de Janeiro hosted the 2016 Olympics. Thousands of state employees have not been paid or have been paid months late due to the financial problems.
Regime forces attacked a protest rally in the island city of Sitra near the capital Manama, where people chanted anti-regime slogans. They used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse the protesters. The demonstrators condemned the Al Khalifa regime for violating the rights of Shia cleric Sheikh Isa Qasim, who is under house arrest. A string of protests have been held in the Persian Gulf Kingdom against the regime's bid to try Sheikh Qasim. The Bahraini regime has been cracking down on dissent since the start of the popular uprising in 2011.
These are the scenes Israel's government wanted to avoid. Jewish settlers occupied this land 20 years ago. In 2014, Israel's High Court ruled the 40 families in Amona are living here illegally. The land belongs to Palestinians. Several of the families living on the hilltop opted to go without a fight. Others, joined by hundreds of settlers from neighboring areas who traveled to the hilltop to show solidarity, defied the court order and confronted the police forces sent to evacuate the outpost.
This is a war over the land, a war of values. Where are you? Where are you? You are the nation of Israel. Stand with us. Turn things upside down. Refuse orders. Be men.
Both sides are advocating nonviolence, but as the forces move in, surround, and come into this community, we're seeing more arrests, more altercations, and the prediction is that the situation here is bound to escalate.
Which it did as the day progressed and forced evacuations ensued. Multiple settlers were arrested and more than a dozen police operatives were injured as the operation carried on into the night. There are approximately 100 illegal outposts in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Amona is the biggest, sitting on 600,000 square meters of land. The court deadline for settlers to be off the land and for all structures to be demolished is February 8.
A young man's body lies in a pool of blood in one of Manila's poorest neighborhoods. It's a scene that has been played out thousands of times during Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs. But this killing came a day after police were ordered to stop all anti-drug operations that have left thousands of people dead. The victim's mother says her son, Aldren de Guzman, had no enemies, but had used drugs in the past.
Pangarap niya sa anak niya mapag-aral niya.
He had a lot of dreams for his children, to give them a good education and have a better life because he wasn't able to finish school himself. But how can he give them a good life now that he's gone because of these killings?
In a recent report, Amnesty International accuses the country's police of carrying out more than 7,000 extrajudicial killings and says that amounts to crimes against humanity.
In southern Madagascar, food and water are scarce. This is the third year in a row the region has faced shortages of water and crop failures. Many people are hungry, and some are starving. Some people are selling their farming tools and livestock just to get some cash to buy the food they need now.
At best, we get 1 cup of rice, which is used for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If we do not get the 1 cup of rice, the adults stay hungry.
And some families who have nothing to sell are surviving by eating wild fruit.
We don't have anything to eat but leaves and red cactus fruit. There's nothing else to eat.
To escape the hardship, thousands of people have fled to cities, including the capital, Antananarivo.
Hunger level in some parts of the country are so high that about 500,000 people are facing severe malnutrition. Aid agencies are warning that things could get worse without urgent assistance.
Food that's been grown now won't be ready for harvest until March. With water so scarce, many people are having to walk for kilometers to get enough to drink, and the young are suffering the most.
There are a lot of children who are going through a very difficult time in terms of health, nutrition, and access to basic water and sanitation services.
Persecuted Christians, we've talked about this overseas.
Right.
The refugee program that, or the refugee changes you're looking to make, as it relates to persecuted Christians, do you see them as kind of a priority here?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, they've been horribly treated. Do you know, if you were a Christian in Syria, it was impossible, at least very, very tough to get into the United States. If you were a Muslim, you could come in. But if you were a Christian, it was almost impossible. And the reason that was so unfair is that everybody was persecuted, in all fairness, but they were chopping off the heads of everybody, but more so the Christians. And I thought it was very, very unfair. So we are going to help them.
After Trump's statement, some evangelical Christians are divided as to whether or not Christian refugees should be given priority status. They say the act of putting one religion ahead of others sets a dangerous precedent. Others worry that expediting refugee entry for Christians will only lead to more persecution. But Representative Chris Smith, a Republican from New Jersey, disagrees. He says Christian refugees do need to be prioritized because they're in a more difficult position. As religious minorities, they don't feel safe in UN refugee camps, which means they don't have access to the refugee program.
When you have been targeted for genocide, the elimination, the evisceration of all of your people in whole or in part, simply because you happen to be Christian, that begs the question on how much we need to be doing, and that it's been non-existent. They also need, in my opinion, the ability to, if they can't go back to Mosul, for example, because it's just too dangerous and security is a big issue, the ability to get processed, get the interview to come to the United States. I mean, these Christian communities can be vetted easier than some because they know each other. They're with their pastor. They're with their faith community. They moved in mass and now are living in Erbil, most of them, 70,000. And it seems to me that some, and most of them still want to go back to their homelands. But if some want to come here because, for the sake of their children, for example, they should at least get the interview and then begin the vetting process. Right now, they're not even getting the interview. They're not in the UNHCR camps, the UN camps. They're unwelcomed there. The women are raped and harassed. The men are discriminated against inside the camps.